women who accomplish good in the corporate career, who have this bold ambition of creating something of their own, but they're also held back by the anxiety of responsibilities that's going to sort of come through.
A woman is less likely to go into a meeting and say, okay, these are the 5 things I've done, give me credit for it. Whereas a male would say, I've done these 5 things, give me credit.
A lot of emphasis is given on, stand up, to your perceived bosses or let's say your spouse at home. But for many women, this itself is a huge leap.
The way I would look at it is you have to take people along with you. You have to kind of, convince them versus stand up to them.
A lot of young girls wanting to get into STEM. And besides computer science and electronics, a lot of male-dominated engineering fields exist, mechanical or aerospace. So what is your message to such girls who are intimidated by the idea of getting into such fields?
I don't think it is becoming as much as, I can't do this. So I think that mindset within them is changing.
Hello everybody, welcome to Rising 2025. Join with me is Anju Gupta, President at Ivy Camp, an initiative of Ivy Camp Ventures. So Anju, welcome to Rising 2025. How does it feel to be a part of an event that celebrates women in tech at large?
I think it's great to be a part of this. I think there are a lot more women coming in tech, women coming in entrepreneurship. So I think it's awesome. And I think it's creating a bigger ecosystem. People are always looking for role models. So the more women in tech, the more women entrepreneurs, the more it's going to grow.
Right. So during your talk, I was just thinking, in my school days, we'd read about Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw or Kiran Bedi or Marie Curie, all these accomplished women. Now there's so many, as you mentioned, the startup ecosystem, whose founders are women, are growing at an unprecedented rate. And while there are challenges, right? So we'll have to accept that. What is it that has been a major catalyst for this growth? What has changed? What biases have sort of diminished? So how is it that we are here, on a very positive note?
Yeah. I think one is, we are having a lot more role models. Like I mentioned, there are a lot more women-driven unicorns and more women IPOs. A lot of women are now taking the leadership role in Fortune 500 companies. And I think in general, women are becoming more confident, more willing to take risks, more belief in themselves, more willing to try out things. And I think in an interesting way, entrepreneurship actually levels the playing field.
Right. But again, for people who aren't exposed to the internet, who aren't exposed to speakers like you or founders, all of us have ideas within, right? We all want to realize that. But sadly, societal norms, for one, make women or young girls believe that, it's beyond their wildest dreams to achieve such goals. So how do they navigate such challenges? And when they don't have access to the role models that you sort of talk about?
So interesting if you see, when we talk about women entrepreneurs, we're not only talking about women entrepreneurs in the big cities. We're talking about women entrepreneurs, in rural India, which is the biggest population, for something as small as setting up their own shops for, let's say, embroideries and handbags, to women farmers who are setting up their own farms and selling. So I think awareness is filtering through. Women are going to the market, seeing what men are doing, seeing what opportunities are there. So I don't think you're reliant on the internet or technology. Women are seeing what's happening around them. And, if you see, women are wanting their daughters to study and, grow and get out there. So I think word of mouth, looking at people, I think smartphones are everywhere. So it's not just, and internet is actually getting everywhere. Right. So I don't think we're limited by information or access in helping. And yes, it is tougher for, let's say, a girl in a rural village in Karnataka to a girl, let's say, living in Bangalore. But I think if you have the push and the drive and the passion, these girls are, creating their business and growing.
Right. And also the next set of people, you were also posed by a question from the audience, like women who accomplish good in the corporate career, who have this bold ambition of creating something of their own, but they're also held back by the anxiety of responsibilities that's going to sort of come through. And this experience is also sort of affected by the biases they've faced in a corporate career, the challenges they've faced. It's like, what if this repeats? What if this gets worse when I become an entrepreneur? So what is your advice to such people who would want to branch out of their corporate career?
So I think that way it's very common in terms of women and men, because moving from a steady corporate paying job where you have a career path to kind of just jumping into something which you have no idea is going to succeed or not. And it's going to take a big chunk of your time and effort to do. So that is one thing. I think, biases that probably come in is, again, where I see, women who don't move fast enough in the corporate world, for different biases, but sometimes it's often driven by us, right? A woman is less likely to go into a meeting and say, okay, these are the 5 things I've done. Give me credit for it. Whereas a male would say, I've done these 5 things, give me credit. So I think that mindset is changing. I think the belief is changing. And like I mentioned, I think it is really important that there is a societal ecosystem that supports it. Like, for example, somebody mentioned, can I take my daughter or my son or my child to work? Let's enable that. Let's help that. And I think a lot of times women don't ask. So ask. Yes. The answer may be no in some cases, but if you don't ask, you wouldn't know. If you're coming back late at work, the spouse or the parents should step in and, help out. Right. So I think that societal help and ecosystem is growing. It's changing as more women are getting into the workforce, as men are becoming more open. So I think that is one of the biggest enablers. Right. And I think specifically to your question, how does a woman in the corporate world think that will the biases stay there? They may be, but if you don't ask, if you don't try, you won't know.
Right. And besides, I ask the same question to most of the guests here. So a lot of emphasis is given on, stand up, to your perceived bosses or let's say your spouse at home. But for many women, this itself is a huge leap. Right? This itself is a huge challenge. Yes. And it's not something that they can inculcate overnight. So it does require a lot of patience. So how do they navigate that mentally taxing challenge that, how do I stand up? Be it anybody, be it parents, be it their spouses. So what is that process like and how does patience play a role in that?
So I think I would not use the word stand up because, stand up seems a little confrontational.
Exactly. Yes.
I think the way I would look at it is you have to take people along with you. You have to kind of, convince them versus stand up to them. So don't make it confrontational, make it a partnership. And I think you have to get more people to help you. If you have family friends, if you have your own friends that are doing it, bring your spouse, bring your parents into those conversations, look at what's happening. I think it has to be a process of working with them, convincing them. And I think a little bit mindset change also happens from that side, whether it's the parent or the spouse. Again, show them examples of people who have done this, from your own network, from your own family, because you have to bring them along.
It gets much more relatable.
It can't be a confrontational thing. It has to be as a group, convinced and working together.
Right. And lastly, being an alumnus of IIT yourself, a lot of young girls wanting to get into STEM. And besides computer science and electronics, a lot of male-dominated engineering fields exist, mechanical or aerospace. So what is your message to such girls who are intimidated by the idea of getting into such fields, but they really want to do that?
So one is, I would say there's a lot of programs created to enable, and the numbers you have seen have grown.
Yes.
Like I mentioned, IIT almost now, every batch has almost 20% kind of women. And even beyond the IITs, a lot of women are getting into engineering. And I don't think it is becoming as much as, I can't do this. Even if you see, in our 10th class, 12th class, look at the toppers.
Yes.
Look at the people who are doing well in maths and physics and science. There are women, there are girls who are doing this.
Yes.
So I think that mindset of, STEM is not for me, computers is not for me, is really not as much, given how well these girls are doing in school. So I think that mindset within them is changing. And I think it's more like the outside mindset, girls may not be able to do this, but I think women themselves are doing it.
Right. And we hope this belief and hope reaches greater heights.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for the conversation, Anju.
Thank you so much.
And I really hope you enjoyed the sessions today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for watching. Thank you so much.